Hello and welcome to part 2 of our exploration of the artist Camilla Dilshat's journey as she prepares for an exhibition halfway through her Masters in Fine Art.
Don't know if you noticed, but there's a shelf missing. So
a disaster.
It collapsed, and I'll show you what happened. So I had all my papers on that top shelf, as well as ceramic sculptures. So my little snakes and my I had like a ceramic sort of sculpture that's broke, my snakes broke, all collapsed, had a mental breakdown, and I think maybe I could try to use it for this exhibition so it doesn't seem like a wasted.
Good.
Yeah, so that's not fun, but that's what happened. Basically make sure your shelves are strong enough to hold heavy ceramic large sculptures.
That's terrible, it's all smashed to bits.
Yeah, it is, but yeah, I talked to a lot of my course mates about it, and they're kind of like, oh, it could be a happy accident, you can make it into something new, it's like one of my course mates was literally like, since this has happened, you need to read about fragmentation now in art. You know, and there's something in this now. The world is telling you to read about fragmentation. And I was like, that's a fair point. I'm gonna do that. I don't know. I've been thinking about ways to sort of like, I don't know, like incorporate it into my sculptures. Well, I'll figure it out. But yeah, it was a gigantic mess to clean up, and the whole day I pretty much tidied up the studio instead of doing work that I needed to do.
Did it happen while you were here?
No, and thank God it didn't, because if I was sitting there and the shelf came down, I would have knocked out as well. Yeah, no, I just came into the studio in the morning and it was just completely collapsed, and it must have happened when no one was here, because I don't think anyone knew it happened. So
That's terrible.
yes. I'm gonna have to make another snake sculpture, because I actually use these snake sculptures to layer latex on them, peel the latex off to create snake skins.
Rather than be obstructed by this misfortune, Camilla considers how this can be used to develop her work further.
I just feel like my art just breaks all the time. It's like I have pieces that are meant to break. Like these things, like they're meant to look like they can break, because that's the way that they're made and the whole point. I have some clay sculptures that I don't fire deliberately, because I like how they crumble away and disintegrate, and I just feel like it has such a great texture. Clay things that I don't fire, I don't turn them into ceramic, I just keep them as brittle, raw clay. But even the things that aren't meant to break still break. My art is just in a constant state of breaking and falling apart. The latex falls apart, the stick sculpture falls apart, and now my ceramic snakes are falling apart when they're not meant to fall apart. But that's fine. That seems to be like the fate of my art.
You're very forgiving of your materials.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to look about it is that the way that materials act can just inherently inform your practice. So the way that, you know, the materials that I use are naturally fragile, inherently fragile, or I keep them as being fragile, or I make them in a way where they don't seem sturdy. It all informs the piece and brings a narrative, whether that's fragility, whether that's a sense of like, where people see like a nomadicness in my sculpture. It can be like taken apart really easily and put again in a different place. Or just a sense of like whimsicalness or floatingness because it's a sculpture, or just in deterioration that adds this and that. And if my piece is about memory or inspired by memory, that then informs again, how fickle memory can be, or how memories can fade and disintegrate, and then, you know, so you can use it very much to your advantage, I think. So it's not always a bad thing that when things break, you know, I'll be upset for like, you know, a day probably. But then after a while, I kind of think about it and be like, you know what, I can use that to my advantage if I choose to make something again, or I might deliberately break my ceramic sculptures. Like, it's not like an accident that it turns out that way.
Yeah, you seem very environmentally conscious, like you're always talking about how your materials can be returned to nature. You seem so considerate of your eco impact.
I feel like it's quite important for artists nowadays to think that way as best as they can. Some material and creative processes, like especially with making metal casts, they're not environmentally friendly at all. But it's really good to be kind of self-aware and self-aware of how your materials will sort of react with the environment long term, as well as being self-aware of how that material came to be. Yeah. There's a lot of things in art. The more you think about it, the more you kind of think, wow, there's loads in art that's not environmentally friendly at all. And my oil paint's technically toxic, some of them. So to use oil paints, you have to use white spirit, which is incredibly toxic for the environment. I don't use white spirit. I bang out the box to get like a healthier alternative.
Camilla has covered the paint and clay-pressed streaks of the sitting gourd with a bandage cast. She is now layering it with gesso, a substance that primes canvas for acrylic paint.
In this processing period, your art pieces can change so much in just a week. You realise that you hate what you've done, and then you cover it up again, or you can change it completely. You kind of know the entire journey, because a lot of people, they just see kind of like this like final finished piece, and they kind of think when they look at the piece, they'll see it in a much more linear way. Like, oh yeah, you made like the armature, then you covered it, then you painted. So many changes happen to one piece, especially when you're in a space of like experimentation as well, which is definitely the space that I'm in. Very popular sculpture material for artists. It's really easy to work with. So it has all these holes in it, you wet it, and then you lay it over sort of like an armature or something, some sort of like surface. And then you can like smooth out the holes when it's wet and get it really smooth. It's so easier to do out if you have like multiple, like if you have like 3 layers of this, and then you can make it really, really smooth and get rid of all the like the lines and the holes and everything. You need patience for that though, to make bandage casts. I knew it would work, and I would be happy with how it looked, and it wouldn't come out wrinkly. I'm just adding as much paint on as I can. The thicker the paint, the better. So, and then I have to wait 2 hours for it to dry. And I was just thinking I'll just make the gourd just this colour with the acrylic. And then I'm going to take a bit of wet clay and then create a mess around the gourd. So like the wet clay will sort of create like marks, and I'll just do it all over and see where to go from there. For now, I'm trying to just focus on this and make sure that I have something that I can submit to the school. So the reason why I'm trying to add more layers of white paint is because this is quite thick paint, and I want this to be as smooth as possible. Some like imperfections I don't mind, I just don't want it to have the bandage texture. I want to fill in those holes, which is proving a lot more difficult than I expected in some areas.
How are you feeling about this project now? You're looking at the gourd like it's...
I'm feeling okay. I have a very clear idea for this gourd, and I feel like it will look it will come out looking fine. It won't be displayed like this, it'll be displayed on its side. It will have a tongue, a ceramic tongue, coming out of this side. Here, I will stuff that with raw sheep's wool that I've processed. Yeah, I bought sheep's, like sheep shearing, and I washed it myself. And then I separated the strands myself, and I kind of tried to create a kind of felt with it.
Oh.
And that's going to be stuffed inside.
It's like a nest.
Yeah, just kind of this like soft entrance where then the ceramic tongue will look like it's coming out of. I've made the inside all nice as well. I've like layered the inside of the gourd with the same material, so it looks like a little cave. I'm going to probably fill the inside with this material as well, like a little surface, and then put in sort of little sculptures, like little salt dough sculptures or little latex dumplings will be sitting inside sort of the stomach of the gourd like this. I haven't really figured out a configuration yet.
After preparing newspaper pulp for the third large gourd, Camilla returns to the hanging gourd.
Yeah, I'm just going to see if I can add some more, I don't know, for that sand texture. Yeah, I'm really tempted to paint over this one as well. Mainly because I'm curious to see if this texture will come through under like acrylic paint, like if I painted it in this acrylic paint, but like just not gloopy, just as thin as possible. I just wonder how the sand texture will come out. But let's not make rash decisions. Let's take things slowly, and I'll see if I need to do that. What you're kind of meant to do, or what I'm kind of meant to do to not be panicking now, is to make smaller versions of everything. You know, like tests. But I kind of immediately, because I work intuitively and quite impulsively, I just like, yeah, I'm immediately gonna go into making like a gigantic gourd. And what has happened is like, I have no idea how to texture it, how to color it. You know, and now I'm just like freaking out, like painting over everything, adding like covering it up and then painting over it again, and that's kind of what's been.
But making all those mini models, it's a luxury of time, isn't it?
It is, 100%. Like, it's probably something I would have done if I didn't have time constraints. I just really don't want the gourds looking perfect and plastic. I want them to have like a sense of like rawness to them. Because I've made so many impulsive decisions with this, and I've not really, I didn't really know the best way to use paper mache in a way where it looks really not wrinkly and a bit more smoother. And then I've been like, oh yeah, I'll just cover up the imperfections with like, I'm just not convinced by how it looks just yet. I'm not convinced, and I might just consider painting over it. Like, I like the sand, and I like the texture of the oil paints, but I feel like there's too much texture going on. Too many layers of texture that's just making it like too much. So you have the texture of the paper mache because the wet paper has wrinkled up and shrunk, and so we have all the wrinkles of the paper mache. Then you have the texture of the oil paints that has like reacted with the paint thinner and kind of created all these kind of like dribbles and cells everywhere. And then on top of that you have the texture of the sand, and it's like almost too much texture. That's why I'm very much considering grabbing flat acrylic paint base, painting over the entire thing, but hopefully still having the texture of the sand come through underneath. So that's kind of like my mind right now. is that on here is too much texture. Yeah, I feel like the next time you come, this might be painted over. It might be.
It'd be kind of cool, like, to have all this background to a piece, how it lives, changes, goes through personas.
I think it's always really interesting to ask an artist what journey their piece has taken, I guess. Because you'd be quite surprised how many changes or how many sort of things has happened underneath the surface. Still don't know how I feel about this, but it's fine. We keep going. What I kind of want to do, but I don't think I can, is I kind of want to, you know how these areas like really concentrated sand? I kind of want there to be a less concentrated sand background. So like you would still see these, but then the whole thing would be covered in sand, and I feel like it would just be a lot more uniform, with just a bit of like the orange sort of base colour coming through in between. But I don't think that would work. I think something has to be done to it before I feel like I'm happy with it. Again, I just feel like the texture is too much. It's texture upon texture upon texture, and it's not reading well. I think I might paint over it. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go crazy with the sand. I'm just gonna put glue on the entire thing and chuck a load of sand on it. Because I feel like if I want coherency, I need consistency. I think that's what I'm thinking. It's a bit of a shame to cover up all the work that I put into it, but sometimes when things it's just not working for you, you just got to make that drastic decision.
So much hidden work that someone can't even imagine has gone into it.
Right. Because like once I finish this, and let's say I just paint it like one colour and then I display it like that, it just won't look like much to people.
Yeah.
But like...
Well, I'm sure it will look like much, it's just that they will have no idea of its story.
Right. That's a nice way to put it. Yeah. It's a labour of love. And I like it when I have to work with my hands with sculptures. That's like a massive part of like my work, is that I'm like ritually processing heritage and identity through the ritual practice of repetition. And working with my hands and imbuing the emotion into things, and I think ritual plays a big part in sort of like everyday things, like craft processes, you know, like for example in like weavers in like, you know, in Urumqi or Turpan, people who use the loom to make traditional woven fabric. So much ritual and repetition goes into that. Just a repetition of like looming a piece and that handmade aspect. Yeah. And spending a long time to kind of like make a craft, to make something, is something that I really like, and I want to bring that into my practice as well. Which is why I kind of choose these sort of labor-intensive ways to make sculptures. Even the process, like the really lengthy process of preparing all this, like I prepared all this paper pulp with my hands. Yeah. I had to strip the newspaper, let it soak overnight, and then literally work into it with my hands as if I'm like kneading dough.
Oh, the sand texture looks great.
I know. This was a good choice to make. It will work, because this is basically going to be like a bursting stomach sack, so I feel like the texture, the sandy texture just works well with that. It just has this kind of...
It looks like a hide.
I like that. I like that. Okay, that's a key word. It's got that like rough camel skin, yeah. Like, yeah, we like that.
With the sitting gourd pretty much completed, Camilla tests how to display it for the exhibition.
I wish I had another piece of paper that was like this. I wish I did more of these.
Do you not like the other ones, or are they just not like?
Then it's just because they're different. I want another one that's this technique that I did here, because these are clay imprints. So I had a ball of wet clay and I just kind of rubbed it over the paper, and then using a fine brush I went in with glue and stuck sand to it. If I had two, I could create a larger platform, because right now it's quite claustrophobic the way this sculpture is sitting on top of the... I want to give it a bit more space. If I had two sheets, which I don't think I have.
Camilla tests elevating the gourd from the platform with the fragments of snake sculptures broken in last week's shelf crash.
Stay. I don't want to move it because it scratches the... No, it's better like that. No, it's not. Okay.
It's exciting though, seeing this like on a plinth. Like, do you feel more
In the zone.
You're seeing, yeah, like this is a piece.
Yeah, it's genuinely like putting things on plinths can completely change how you view the artwork completely. Yeah, plinths are very important, but plinths can also, they can change your artwork in ways where you don't want it to be read. It can make your artwork seem really formal. So you have to be careful with plinths, that's what I've been told. If you just put things on top of a white plinth, that can be seen as kind of lazy. And then it will completely change the artwork.
Sort of needlessly signalling, oh, this is art, when...
right. It's true, yeah. It's like, put it on a white plinth, it's art. Take it seriously. I have a drawing where there's like sand around the tongue area. And then there's like patterns in the sand, you know, like striped patterns going round and round and round.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering whether I could add that. I mean, it probably need a bit more space.
I don't like the sound of that, because people would have such a visceral reaction to seeing a tongue.
In sand.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're meant to be nurturing snakes, because the gourd is a nurturing symbol. Oh yeah, let me add.
That looks so tasty.
Yeah, I think I might have a couple of dumplings in there. Figure it out. I've been told many times that it doesn't look like a gourd, so rip. Which is okay, it's fine, it happens.
How does it not look like a gourd?
I'm
confused.
I think when people look at it for the first time, they may not necessarily go straight for, oh, that's 100% identifiable as gourd. They may just think, oh, it's sort of like a weird abstract vessel or a...
Could that be sort of cultural differences where people think of gourds like pumpkins and they're not thinking of the gourds that you'll have that are more...
round and bulbous. Yeah, that's the thing. I think definitely there is a cultural difference. Some people think more pumpkins and like the gourds with lines in them, whereas the gourds that my parents are familiar with, they're like the smooth, sort of bulbous gourds. I mean, even this I think is not bulbous enough, but you know what? We'll see how people read it at the exhibition. But before, like in this moment right now, I'm not thinking about all the eyes that's going to be on it and how they're going to read it. I'm very much just making decisions that I'm happy with.
Just focusing on the pieces themselves.
Yes, focusing on the pieces themselves, and then we'll see how people react. Scary.
I asked Camilla about how her fine art masters is going so far.
It's been great. It's been really great. Like I'm really glad that I'm on a masters. Like my art has developed how much? Over basically not even 2 years. That's been my art career, and I'm already doing a master's. In my work, where I thought I was just making work about diaspora and identity, and then all of a sudden, like food and comfort and how important that is as a way of connecting to your identity has come to fruition. My connection to my mother, that's something I realized while on this course. I read that's another line of thread, and then food relates to that because my mom is a person who makes food in the household, and then everything gets connected, and it's made my work a lot more in-depth, like there's specific things, there's specific territories I'm inhabiting. It's not just, oh, I just make work around diaspora, and that's like the biggest subject that you could choose, and so people can't really grasp on anything. So like I have very much condensed so much into a short amount of time, which has been very overwhelming. It's actually shocking that I got into a master's. I've been like,
How?
I know, well, because I had a portfolio that made up work that I made not even a year's worth of work. That was my portfolio. So,
I know it sounds like you've got a bit of imposter syndrome there.
oh yeah, definitely. I have imposter syndrome all the time. 24/7. I ignore it. So I ignore the imposter syndrome. But like it's because I guess my reason for wanting to do art was spurred on from very specific origins. But then after my history degree, after doing my dissertation, and my dissertation was kind of like reconnecting to ancestral history, and I was kind of like, I could make art just about that. And then that's it. I had a very clear direction. I just didn't know how the art was going to turn out materially, and that was what I've been sort of pursuing. Because I had the direction. That's basically I followed this whole time. It's just making sense of myself and my identity. And it's just been messing around with materials and different ways of displaying and like contextualizing my work and like.
How are you feeling about these 3 gourds?
Better than before. Yeah, for sure I'm going to definitely have 2 gourds that I can exhibit. This one's not going to take that long to finish. I mean, after doing this, all that's left to do for this one is cure some latex and create some latex noodles and stuff, which will probably take it could take a day if I was just spent a whole day just doing that. So this one will be done as well. So the only one that's worrying me is this one, but if that one's not ready to exhibit, then it's just not ready to exhibit. Like I have a very clear vision of how this one's going to turn out. So yeah, I'm in a much better space than I was a couple of days ago. Where it's just panic, pure panic.
You already were being so constructive about the shelf breaking last time I saw you, but like, it was just a bit heartbreaking that this had to happen. And
I know, it's, I don't know, it's just, you just gotta pick yourself up and just keep moving. I'm very good at that, I think. I'm very good at like, shedding like 2 tears, have a mini mental breakdown on the inside, and then being like, I can't stop. I don't know if it's healthy. I'm very much the type of person, it's like, my life is falling apart around me, but like, I don't have time to stop. I have exams, like, you know, you just keep going. So. This is so satisfying. I could just keep doing this, but like, I have other things to do. I really should move on, but I'm actually really enjoying this process.
yeah, it seems so satisfying.
Yeah, it is. It's great. Alright, I'm still a little bit annoyed about some areas. I'll get them covered eventually. But I'm just going to tidy all this up now. I use, to make these gourds, all of them, all 3 of them, I've used chicken wire. which is incredibly difficult to manipulate. It's quite nice to work with because it kind of does work a bit like clay. Like it does stick to itself and holds a form.
Yeah.
So that is quite nice.
I love the texture of this sheep's wool.
Oh, I love it too. It's just, I don't know, there's just something about the texture of sheep's wool that's just so alluring. I really want to do more with it, and hopefully I'll be able to have time once this exhibition is kind of passed.
Yeah, do you feel like you're sort of on track? Things are coming together.
Things are coming together, which is good, because that's basically exhibitable now. Just little tweaks here and there, but in its current state and form, yeah, it can be exhibited. And that I'm not worried about, that will be ready. So I have 2 pieces that will be ready if I just focus on them for like another week, you know, for certain, you know. So if this is not ready, that's fine, that's okay. Would be nice, but it's really not the end of the world. There's so much goes into sculpture sometimes.
Yes.
and then you display it and it doesn't look like much.
With the third large gourd being prepared for a later project, the sitting and hanging gourds were ready to be installed at the exhibition space. Camilla shot some video of the sculptures before the crowds filtered in. This marks the end of this part in Camilla's artistic journey, where she mapped how many themes in her work, food and fullness, discomfort and disconnection, interact with each other. It will be interesting to see whether the voices of these gourds echo into future works, and what Camilla will do next as she completes her masters. Thank you so much to Camilla Dilshat. It was a joy to work with you, and we're really excited to see where you go next. Check out Camilla Dilshat's work on her website and social media and see what she's creating now. Thank you very much for coming on this journey with us. If you'd like to see more artist explorations or hear music being created by our community, head on over to our canvas on the Tarim Network website. And an exciting announcement. Our Canvas is building an online gallery for all kinds of creative submissions from the Tarim Network community. So if you would like to share your work to be discovered and enjoyed on this platform, follow the link both here and in the description below to pitch to us. Until next time, remember, no matter what stage of your journey, there is meaning in what you create. Take care.